Hello and welcome to today's webinar, the Business Owners webinar dealing with the COVID-19 crisis. My name is Joe DeGuzman, Senior Certification Coordinator for the IALD. Let me throw it to Stephen Brown, Professional IALD and CLD. Steve, take it away.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for IALD for facilitating this opportunity and providing the content. This presentation, which we anticipate will take about 45 minutes, is based upon a similar presentation that was presented by Barbara Horton and David Catan in the US a couple of weeks ago. We have based this presentation upon that. Along the way, we've, I guess, changed some of the terminology. We have Australianized it to some degree. You know, we've taken out some of the American stuff. You know, we took out aluminum and added back in aluminium, changed the spelling of color, that sort of stuff. Not really. But this is obviously a very topical topic at the very moment. And being a historian, I thought I might provide a little bit of context to all of this, because one of the words that we keep hearing at the moment is about how unprecedented this is. Although in pandemic and epidemic terms, it is in fact not unprecedented, because epidemics do actually occur on a fairly regular basis. What is unprecedented is the fact that, unlike previous epidemics, we've effectively imposed a Great Depression upon ourselves by physical distancing and closure of businesses to save lives. So it had us effectively living through a pandemic and a depression both at the same time. If you look at some of the things that occurred, I mean, for example, in 1889, there was a thing called the Russian flu that lasted for 2 years. There was the Spanish flu that lasted for 2 years. There was the swine flu, which lasted for 2 years, and the Ebola crisis went for 4 years. So what you can see is that these things do occur, and they generally tend not to be short duration. A lot of those things went on for a couple of years. So my personal opinion is this is not a 3-month condition. It could well last quite a long period of time, but what is clear is that it will end. We've all heard the term disruption. Well, we know what it means now, and I guess this is the new normal, what we're doing now, and I'm sure we're all experiencing this. The aim of this webinar is to share first-hand perspectives on maintaining business in this new normal, dealing with design and management issues, creating a virtual team, and maintaining cash flow, which is very important. And in terms of the team of panelists and volunteers that have been assembled, there is myself. I've been an IALD member since 1989. Recently come off a 4-year stint on the board. Replacing me on the board effectively was Anna from FPOV in Sydney, who's along today, and she is a current board member from this part of the world. We also have David Becker, who is the chair of the CLD Commission and has been heavily involved in that, I think, for about 5 or 6 years now, David. We also have a New Zealand coordinator, Kate Conway, who's in Auckland, and she's building up a New Zealand chapter at the moment, and also the New South Wales coordinator, Don Salisbury, who, as you can see from his image, there is practicing social distancing even in the photo, which is very commendable. Well done, Don. We hasten to add that whilst we can provide business perspectives, we are not financial experts. We're lighting design experts. And we would encourage members to seek independent financial advice. By all means, we can answer some questions at the end on very general stuff, but we are not financial people. So getting right into it, tips for maintaining business in the new normal. And Joe, if we could just move along to the kind of summary slide, which is slide 5, I think. Planning is super important. Planning is not for the next few weeks. Planning is potentially for the rest of this year. And it's important to plan for the future, not for the next few weeks, but for the next potentially 8 or 9 months. Work holes are happening. We've been fairly lucky in this country that construction sites are still going, although in New Zealand they have been shut probably, I think, for about a month or so now, and maybe might reopen next week, as I believe, Kate. It's been that way for a little while now.
Yeah, they're due to reopen on Tuesday. Mainly essential work, so some of it's still on hold.
But projects are going on hold. I'm sure we've all seen it. Some work is stopping. Some project sites will stop regardless of the fact that construction sites are still open. Things that we might have learnt from the great financial crisis of 2008, hoarding cash, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in slides to come. Something that governments have certainly learnt over the last 2 months, that overreaction is better than underreaction when faced with a crisis, and sometimes doing things that might seem dramatic pay off in the end. There is a need to share cost-cutting plans openly and share concerns so there's no surprises. Everybody knows what's coming. And planning stuff that's in our control to reduce anxiety. Planning things that we can control and not getting worried about the things that we can't. At this point, I'd like to handball across to Don, who will talk about communication and how to communicate in this new normal.
Thanks, Steve. All right, so it's a little bit of a death by PowerPoint here, so you'll have to bear with us. But just going through these point by point, they're all really key items that we need to communicate across where everybody's at, and everyone's in the same boat here. So yeah, sure, there's different circumstances, but I think we're all sharing the same situation at different levels. So the first point is to communicate with staff good and bad news. Now, I can't stress how much for our perspective, particularly, communication with our staff has become the most important thing for all different reasons. I mean, this on the surface, I guess, is talking about just communicating you know, good or bad news as to where things are at. Yes, that's important. Yes, we definitely want to focus on good things. We want to keep morale up, but we also want to be extremely transparent about where things are at. There's no need to sugarcoat things where things are at. I think we need to be totally open with where things are at for everybody. We definitely don't want to breed uncertainty. You know, uncertainty breeds tension and stress. So we want to keep open about all parts of what's going on. We definitely want to communicate for good workflow as well. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that you take for granted when you're in a common space is just cross flow of communication that you just don't have when you're working remotely. So that's a really key thing to keep in mind, that if you can put together a format or have a platform where you can open up very clear communication paths and be it online, over the phone, whatever it may be, yeah, that they're really important things to focus on. And look, at the end of the day, your team is your family. You know, you want to treat them as your own. There's no need to hide anything from anybody. Keep open communication as much as you can, and that's only going to breed trust, and you know, trust in the long run, particularly if this is going to go on for another month or so, is something you need to have in your pocket for sure. You know, there's the level of supervision that I think we essentially are lacking at the moment. You know, sort of comes down to how we communicate and levels of trust that you can have within the team. Second point, be proactive with outreach to clients about project status. Look, this is pretty obvious. I think the important key here is don't be dramatic. I think you can too often be a little bit swept up in it, and if clients contact you and they want to put projects on hold, you know what, everyone's in the same boat. They're probably as disappointed as you are. So there's no need to get overly dramatic about it. Be supportive about it, and they're more likely to sort of support you when things get back online as well. So so yeah, sort of take it with a grain of salt, and you know, these things are going to happen, but I think they're definitely a lot better here in Australia than what they have proven to be elsewhere. So I think we're pretty lucky. Third point, demonstrate how you continue to be responsive for active projects. Absolutely crucial. You know, beyond the fact that you want to have a strategy to keep productive in what you do, communicate that with your clients. Make sure that they're aware that you're still working. You're still going to hit deadlines. You've still got the capacity to deal with everything that you need to deal with. It's good to give them reassurance about that. You know, that way they can, you know, they know they can trust on you, trust you to deliver the goods when you need to be. At the same time, communicate, you know, honestly about the things that you can't do. And I think that's sort of a given. You don't want to be promising things that you can't deliver. Yeah, just be open about it. And again, just clear communication. The next one's a bit more about financial issues, but speak to your bank about credit line and increase to maximum possible. Yeah, this could mean anything to do with, say, any sort of credit overdrafts, whatnot. Look, I'm not sure about everybody else, but I mean, we sort of put a stop on spending pretty early within our firm, so we've got a little bit to draw on, and I think yeah, hopefully everybody's in a similar boat. Yeah, look, if you need to contact your bank or you've got issues financially, yeah, I think you need to be open about that with these institutions. And I think most of what I've heard, and not from personal experience, but from what I've heard, there is a lot of leeway with banks at the moment, which is a good thing. I think they're being very understanding. The government financial packages is a really important one. Again, this is something that really relies on everybody themselves to contact your accountants and your professionals that deal with these sorts of things. There's a few schemes out there at the moment that are becoming incredibly helpful. So talk to them. You know, the obvious ones, the JobKeepers allowance, sure, but there's also some other allocated tax breaks, which are really important for business owners. So, but yeah, best to get that advice independently from your own accountants. Review your accounts receivable and start collections. Yep, really important. That sort of thing you should be on top of anyway, but definitely at the moment. You know, any sort of any sort of things that you're owed through accounts receivable. It's important not to get too aggressive about that. I think, again, you need to be understanding with your clients. Everybody, again, is in the same boat. So as long as we're not getting too overly aggressive with what we're expecting, I think that should be a good thing. But I will say that what we do know is there are some quite large firms who are starting to put policies together internally to sort of slow down payments. So they're just things to keep in mind, particularly when it comes to timing of invoicing. Make sure everything's on time. You don't want to give anyone an excuse not to have to pay you. So yeah, just tighten things up generally, and make sure you're talking to the accounts divisions with your clients. That's always a good thing to be involved with anyway. Engage your staff in terms of communications, client care, and the financial stuff as well. Definitely important. You don't want to have that load just on the yourselves who are running businesses. You want to sort of share that load a little bit. And it's a good thing anyway. I think there's some positives that come out of this in terms of communication and sharing information with your team, and transparency about how the companies operate. So utilize them, make sure everyone's aware of what they need and what the business needs, and they can sort of talk back and forth with clients and give them the tools to allow them to do that. In terms of talking to your landlord about deferring rent, again, there's some element of necessity in this. From what we understand, if you do qualify for the JobKeepers allowance, that gives you a really good foothold to negotiate rent release or rent relief, I should say. So that's something just to bear in mind. But everyone's going to be in a different situation there. So communicate with your landlords as much as you can if you think you really need to go down that avenue. The last one's a bit of a repeat really, but talking creditors about payment deferments. Sure, yeah. Look, if there's some sort of creditors that are becoming demanding, I think there's definitely an avenue for relief. It's just a matter of communication, making sure you're really open about those sorts of things. So we can move along, Joe. So secure. So this is, I guess we're going to share this with David, hopefully, but I'll get you to jump in when you're ready, David. But we'll go through these bit by bit. So creating a cost management plan. I think this should be something that everybody already has to be honest. If you don't, you should. So yeah, I think your clients will be doing the same when it comes to tightening their spending. So so have strict rules about what you do when you're sending invoices out, you know, what you're spending your money on, be punctual with your invoicing. You know, I think that's pretty straightforward. You know that your clients are going to be doing that, so it's really important that everybody does the same. Sure, have a good idea of what's down the pipeline. I think that's super important. Again, should be things that people are already doing, making sure they've got good forecasting. You know what's coming, you know how to react to it well before it comes. A good sort of 2 or 3 months before would be a really good guide. You need to be able to be reasonably fluid with where you're at sort of post disaster. So all of those points are definitely important. Reduce your non-essential spending.
So if I just jump in there, on one of the other webinars I was watching, I think it was David Catan and Barbara Horton. David Catan suggested it was quite a good idea to have 3 cash management plans. What you know now, what you suspect might happen, and version 3, what you hope won't happen, but if it does. And I think that's not a bad idea. So you sort of have, it gets you to start thinking forward about possibilities.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. All right, non-essential office spending. I think there's lots of components to that, and I think again everyone will be in different situations depending on where they're at. But just think about the obvious things. I mean, there's going to be things that you won't be spending money on. You won't be spending money on travel, obviously. So that's a sort of given. But then there's the not so obvious things. So things like subscriptions. You know, if you've got in-house subscriptions that won't be necessary, you've got cleaning. People order fruit boxes, or God knows what. You know, there's all these things that will be sort of month to month that generally you won't be needing. So maybe just a quick sort of thought process about what's necessary, what's not necessary is going to be really valuable. Making sure staff are doing timesheets daily. This is one that I've been quite strict with our team. We've usually been pretty lax with timesheets, or at least with hourly rate work that require timesheets. So doing them daily, make sure that nothing gets missed, and sort of squeezes down the thought process that goes along with it. So I think, you know, create something for your staff that makes it easy, you know, an easily shared document, spreadsheet that allows your staff to tap into and record information, and you can check on it and record that daily. I think that's definitely a really good positive thing to get involved in. Pause the things that you don't necessarily require day to day. I think the luxuries that you usually would have within the team, and I think you reassess what is readily necessary in terms of what you spend money on. Cash is queen. Review your cash balance. Again, sort of comes back to this situation of having cash on hand to deal with any sort of bumps that you have to face over the next few months. That's again sort of a given. So do what you can to keep cash ready and fluid. Engage your staff to help with all collections, project status updates weekly. Again, we've sort of repeated that again, but it's super important in terms of securing payments. So make sure your staff are clued up on that, and they do engage in that process also. This is a difficult one. Postpone non-essential new hires. Look, that's going to come down to workload, and if people are hiring new people at the moment, which would be a surprise, yeah, maybe think about it and have a really good look at the pipeline. If you absolutely believe that you're going to need new staff, then by all means go for it. But I think what's most important is retaining your really good staff, making sure that they're looked after, whether that's through a JobKeeper scheme or otherwise. But yeah, making sure that you identify who are the really key people in your business, and they're the ones you look after in the first instance, without being too selective. But at the same time, don't forget about the guys who you know you're going to need around. So don't leave anyone in the trash heap. You know, you want to keep everybody involved, and you don't want to let people down. You know, they're the people that have put trust in you to keep them employed. So yeah, do everything you can to make sure everyone's got enough of what they need to keep themselves comfortable. I think we're lucky in the construction industry that things are still moving ahead locally in Australia, and I think that's been a bit of a saviour for us. So yeah, I think we're definitely one of the luckier industries. So yeah, don't take advantage of it. Make sure we do everything we can to keep things rolling.
Thanks, Don. David Becker, do you want to take us through managing?
Yeah.
Which is the next slide.
Yeah, sure. Some of these points overlap with what Don has said, but it doesn't hurt to repeat them. The first point is to assure your clients that you can deliver work under contract. I think that's the first thing you have to do is reassure your staff. But after that, you need to make sure that your clients have got confidence in you, because after all, you are part of their team, and you need to reassure them that you are coping and that you've adapted to the new situation and that you won't let them down. So I think that's important, because your existing clients are going to be essential for the return to normality, because trying to find new clients at this time is rather difficult. Communicate with staff with weekly meetings or more on finances. I would say communicating with staff weekly is nowhere near enough. You need to communicate with them very regularly in order to mitigate fear, if nothing else. And I think this new environment we live in, not so much for me because I don't have staff at the moment, but certainly I can relate to it very well. We need to refine communication skills, because communicating with people is not now just sort of wandering over to their desk. You've got to sort of communicate with them remotely, and that's a whole new ball game. It's really essential that I think staff are involved in the problem. As Don said, there are no surprises here. Everybody's aware of the problem. So I think it's essential that staff are in tune with forecasting as well. They're part of understanding the landscape. And as Don said, cash flow is the lifeline of a business. So you've got to really make sure that you understand what's in the pipeline, and involving staff in that problem solving is part of the process, I think, in these new times. Now, IT, as anybody knows me, will know that it's not my strong point. So I'm talking anecdotally here, but I think we all know now that bandwidth is very, very important, and high speeds. And I think that what has to happen is you need to pay for the staff to have the best possible limits, and if that requires upgrading their contracts, then I think that it's incumbent on the businesses to do that. If ever there was a good time to be an IT consultant, this would have to be it. I think the thing about IT is that it solves a lot of the problems at the moment, but working online diminishes the creative process. I mean, Michelle Goopy was saying to me yesterday how it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes in some ways, not going to meetings accelerates the process, but the flip side of that is that you don't have something to bounce ideas off of, so you can go stale, and that can slow you up. So it's a whole different kind of environment we're in. It's certainly, although IT enables the work to go on, there's something missing. I think it's worth exploring software options to see how performance can be enhanced and see what you're comfortable in, and managing bandwidth hungry programs. If you've got young kids at home who are playing games, I guess you'd try and sort of make yourself unpopular by suggesting they turn them off. When it comes to marketing, you know, I think now is the time to really get into it, because there's always a lag, and I think it really requires. We always fancy ourselves as being imaginative, and this is the time to be really imaginative about marketing, because we can't go to lunch with people. You know, we need to explore things like online presentations, virtual cocktail hours I've heard of, and things like that. But we do need to put effort into managing our marketing now, because it's part of positioning ourselves for normalization. Where are we up to? Evaluate your portfolio. Oh yes, so this is, I think this goes hand in glove with marketing. I think it's important to assess your portfolio and see if there's anything you want to diversify out of, or diversify into get out of more vulnerable markets. And I was reading that 60% of businesses say that they are negatively affected, and 81% of small businesses like ours are negatively affected. So we really need to look at what it is we do, and things like hospitality can be, you know, is certainly hurt a lot at the moment, and we all do a bit of that. I was looking online that I googled you know, vulnerable markets, and there's quite a good tool from IBIS World called the exposure tool, and it's not really revelatory, but it gives an indication by country, by region, areas, industries that are affected and to what degree, and it's kind of worth just having a look at. I would also say, as part of looking at your portfolio, it would be worth looking at your CLD application. You know, apart from the professional relevance, now is a time to try and underwrite your competency, particularly if you're trying to get into a new market and you want to, you know, diversify your portfolio. It's part of your marketing currency, and you know, it's an opportunity to say something new, to get back in touch with your clients. So I would really suggest that people put quite a bit of effort into that. When it comes to protecting your staff's health, I mean, this is key. This is, you know, this is core policy, and I think it's important that all staff are made aware that you are concerned for them. You know, it's part of looking after the family. You need to be empathetic to the team and their families. Things like site visits. I mean, are there ways that you can do site visits remotely? You know, can the contractor perhaps be, you know, do a video sort of scan of the room and help you? But I think, you know, when you think that hotels are running at 4% occupancy at the moment, apparently, you know, does that lobby really need to be tip-top shape? You know, is it something that can wait and be fine-tuned when the virus subsides? I think all those things are worth keeping in perspective. And when we come to being a remote leader, being flexible and nimble, I think it's just, as a leader, you know, maintaining your staff's confidence remotely is an extra burden that business owners have, and it's, you know, requires a skill that perhaps needs a bit of fine tuning, but it's really essential. I think you need to be tolerant with staff and their families, understand the difficulties they're going through. Perhaps they can't deliver the work in the time frame that you need. You know, they need to work late at night or very early in the morning because they're having to look at homeschool and look after their children during the day. So I think that's important. I think, you know, it's worth sharing as a leader, I think it's worth sharing your problems with them. Although, having said that, of course, nobody feels sorry for the boss, so you need to keep that in mind as well. What I do think is important is relaxing. You know, it is difficult. Don, you said, I think in an email a week or so ago, you know, it's how we're all managing to get by, but what an extra burden this is on us. And it's not as if we were sort of, it was an easy job to start off with. So we're all facing extra difficulties. And I think those extra difficulties require us to put a a bit more emphasis on relaxation, you know, whether that's walking the dog or yoga or reading or, you know, restoring that 1970s Italian motorbike, whatever it might be. I think these are things that we need to really take perhaps more seriously than we did before, because we are being stressed a bit more than previously. Now, just on that reading thing, I did see Barbara Horton in her webinar. She mentioned a book which I haven't read, but it's called The Year Without Pants, and the title doesn't really give much away. So I looked it up, and I'll read you a summary. It says it's about a convention-defying company called Automatic that's behind software marketed by WordPress. There are 120 employees who work from anywhere in the world that they want. They barely use email and launch improvements to their products dozens of times a day, affecting 50 million websites with a fraction of the resources Google, Amazon, and Facebook have. The Year Without Pants shares the secrets of the WordPress phenomenon from the inside and reveals insights on creativity, productivity, and leadership from the kind of workplace that might be in everybody's future. So I thought that might be a book I'll read, and it might be something worth sharing with everybody to see if it has relevance to them. So I'll pass on now to the next presenter and the next slide.
Yes, over to Anna, who will talk us through caring, sharing, and checking in.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, as Dawn and David was mentioned about taking care about our staff. Yes, we are creative people, and looking after our staff, we allow their creativity to solve problems. And we can see my team looking after each other, helping each other, and having more voice. They are asking more for help, taking more initiative to contact clients, to reply emails, and definitely we are improving our communication skills. Routine and focus are important tools at this moment. There is so much noise outside. Everyone is trying this new life, this new normal, and so many coronavirus news, social media, WhatsApp groups, school groups. I really struggle being 100% focused on my work or 100% teaching. So I've made a schedule on my first week. So following the school schedule, homeschooling in the morning and focus my work during the afternoon and night, which is pretty hard. So I am lucky to have amazing directors and amazing work colleagues, so I can have this flexibility, which help me to don't burn out and focus on my work. Also, watching the stress management. So we have weekly catch-ups, and our leadership team, we encourage each other to look after ourselves. So we always talk about it, and everyone has one thing that they like to do, or having a break, going to the beach at lunchtime, short bike rides, meditation, online classes, yoga classes, as David said. It's really important for us to look after ourselves, and then we can look after our staff. So listen to financial podcasts. I really don't know if you like to do and share with your staff. I don't think it's my type of thing. Helping our staff manage their work schedule. So in our team, we have weekly, daily breakfast chat. So we talk about what we are doing at that day and also what we need help or not, and weekly happy hours to talk about everything else, movies, Netflix series, talking about kids noisy in the park, whatever. And these things, I think, keep our team together so we can feel that we are a group and we will pass through to the other side together. Yeah, so I think next slide, Joe, please. So this chart, yeah, I received from the IOG presentation. It's interesting to see that we have the baseline with the 0, and we have positive numbers, 1, 2, 3, and negative numbers. Also, we have a few words, so we can mix them each other. We can choose 1.5 or 2.5. I shared with a few team members, and we are in the positive side. We are calmly tired and strangely energized. It's nice if it's good to see weekly how we are feeling. So when we can see how we started this journey and how we will be when everything go back to the next new normal. And the next slide, Joe, please. Yeah, we have some pictures here. We would love to see you all. Photos, pictures, please share with us everything that you are doing to make you happier, everything that you do when you wake up and say, okay, one more day at home, one more day working from home and working with home. So all this environment that for sure we will miss in the future, but yeah, please share with us your pictures, and we can pass each other and see we all together.
All right, thank you, Anna. And we have a couple of slides which Kate is going to talk us through, which is the resources that are available. We've done a bit of a look around to see what resources that are available online for members to look at, access, read. I'll let Kate talk about those now.
As you're probably aware, there is so much information online, and it's really going back to, you know, your trusted sources and where we can get, you know, accurate information. We've provided a few links here which relate to, for Australia, the Department of Health, you know, information on workplaces, close contacts, inflation for employers, how to prepare your workplace, you know, and those kind of things that need to be considered. And then also information resources for psychology on as employers, how that plays out in our workplace, and what resources are available should you need them. There's also 2 very information videos done by the Australian Department of Health and SBS, which links are below, which provide some very good information and very easy to understand format, which I found quite informative. If we move on to the next slide, Joe. So looking more at New Zealand resources, which is the ones I'm more familiar with. We've got information from the Ministry of Health. Obviously, New Zealand is going to be changing levels in the next few days. So there's a lot of information, especially around employment and what services will be open, what precautions need to be in place and things like that. So there's resources for the Ministry of Health, Foreign Affairs and Trade, and also business innovation and employment. So there's lots of resources available from the government websites, also World Health Organisations there. And something else we need to consider moving forward is also travel. When travel, I guess, does reopen, hopefully everyone's staff is home and in a place, and we're not having to worry about any kind of travel restrictions. But you know, we do need to be aware of those, and you know how the business responds once borders start to reopen. And then also in New Zealand, we've got lots of workplace guidelines from WorkSafe, and SiteSafe just released new rules for level 3 on site procedures as well for accessing site, which includes a lot of PPE for when sites reopen on Tuesday. So there's lots of information. We've just collated a few different resources, ones which we thought were useful and predominantly linked to government departments. We've also included in the list psychology links as well, for both here and also the ones that were shared with the on the American webinar as well, because we thought they were very good resources. That I mean, psychology doesn't have a border, so I think all information in that realm can be shared. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Kate. Next slide, Joe. There's a couple of additional resources that we've come across of putting this presentation together that we found were quite useful. The Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry has put out a document called the COVID-19 Employer Guide. The one you can see that just happens to be the Victorian version, but I think each state has an equivalent. It's about a 30-page document available online and downloadable, or if anybody can't locate it, contact me and I can email it. Next slide, Joe. We also have a document we've come across called Fair Work Act Amendments and JobKeeper Subsidy from the Australian Business Lawyers and Advisors Association, whoever they are. Again, a very clear and interesting document that's fairly current, contains a lot of information about the Fair Work Act and how the JobKeeper subsidy works. And again, I could email that to those who want it. Also received yesterday the weekly email out from the IES that talks about tax breaks from the ATO for working from home. I think it's something like 80 cents an hour, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I guess for a 40-hour week, that's $32 a week tax break for sitting at home in your home office, which I'm sure there's a lot of information available online from that. And at that point, we finish the main part of the presentation, and I'll throw back over to Joe, who can facilitate questions and answers.
Thank you so much, guys. Great job, great content. I do have a couple of questions here, but I'd like to remind everyone, if you want to submit a question, use the questions box on the right-hand side, send that in, and we'll go ahead and get to those questions. First question. Let's start with Stephen, and we'll kind of just go down the line. If this pertains to you or not, you can just pass if it doesn't pertain to you. But what platforms are you using for team communications? Stephen, go first, and then just pass it along to somebody else.
We use Microsoft Teams, which our entire organization uses. We did, in times gone by, use Skype for Business, but if I'm being perfectly honest, we find Teams performs way better. We have very few problems with Teams. We used to have a lot of problems with Skype, but personal opinion. Anything else, guys? Any other suggestions?
Yeah, I'll jump in. We're actually Mac based, and all of our email runs through Gmail. So the primary platform, or obvious platform for us, is Hangouts and Meet, which is all Google based. Hangouts has been extremely beneficial for us. It's something we use from start of the day to the end of the day, and we can just flick messages back and forth without having to flood emails back and forth, and they're just single chat groups and then video chats and markups and things like that. So Hangouts has been really helpful for us, definitely. A little less formal. It's sort of more in-house within the team, but external to that, Zoom for us has been really good. Zoom has a great markup functionality where you can literally do live markups and it's as you would be sort of sitting there scribbling on paper. It's really helpful.
So if I can jump, we use Teams, Microsoft Teams internally to talk with our own team. So, and with clients and suppliers, we use GoToMeeting, which is really useful as well, because people can just call or just listening or from their mobiles, and it's really good.
Kate, do you use anything?
I share with Steve, because he's my boss.
There you go.
He's forced to use Teams also. But one of the things that we really like about Teams is we can share big files on it, so you can upload the file section, including really big images. So that we find very useful.
We also have a virtual kitchen where you can post pictures of your animals. Funny things, so you can hang out if you want to have a cup of tea with some other people. So that's quite a nice function as well.
Pets, the unpaid staff members of every firm. Moving on to the next question. Have any of you got Telstra to scale back the office internet while staff are working from home but not losing their phone? I'm guessing Telstra is a telecom company?
Oh, telecom company, yep.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I guess is anyone, because everyone's working from home, is anyone scaling back their internet for their office, or potentially even getting rid of the internet from their office if they can, but keeping phones and anything at the bare minimum? Is anyone doing anything like that?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how you've set your server up. We all have direct remote access to our NAS, which is in the office. So we'd probably be cutting our arm off if we reduced our internet in the office. But yeah, I'm guessing most people will be in the same boat where they're still accessing servers remote, in which case you probably require it to stay.
No, but I mean, what we've done is like put the phones on a collaborative data plan rather than individual data, so it can be shared more easily between people who use it a lot and people who don't. So it's still got the same baseline.
Okay. Next question. Hello, great presentations. Thank you. Have you had any projects paused in design? We have mostly seen the affected industries like hospitality. Has anyone experienced any pauses in any projects?
If no one else will, yeah. Look, in our sort of collection of projects, we've had probably anywhere between sort of maybe 5 to 10% of projects go on hold. So reasonably low number, really, but very, very hospitality bias and retail as well. They seem to be the most dramatically hit sectors. But surprisingly, there's still a few hotels that we've been working on, even still early stages, that have decided to hammer on, sort of taking advantage of the sort of downtime to get their projects on track. So yeah, it's sort of interesting.
I think we're finding things continue to the next milestone, and then they're not kind of finishing in the middle of a stage. Such, I think.
Yeah, I'd say our mix is. I'd agree with Don. Sort of maybe 5%, 5 to 10% pause, and again retail, hospitality, but we find that commercial is still unchanged to a large degree.
Okay, great. Next question. Do you think that we will see mergers and acquisitions between lighting design firms, smaller firms getting together to create a bigger firm, or resource sharing between firms, etc.? Does anyone have an opinion on that?
Anna just did that.
Yeah, so yeah, my company, we just merged with Firefly last year. So now we are FPOV, and we do that on our daily basis. We share resources, and yeah, we have 40 designers around the globe. I feel that many projects is slowing down, not going on hold, but something in Asia is really chaotic now. They are working a lot, and we just share resources, and it's been great because we can support some of the studios that have less work nowadays, these days. But I feel merging between Australian firms, I feel that we can be open to helping each other, but I don't know, I don't see that is the time of merging.
I think if we're all still sitting at home hiding from coronavirus in 2024, that certainly might be on the table, but not in the short term.
All right. How are you dealing with product or supplier training?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. We've actually had a bit of a boost in suppliers contacting us to do their own little presentations online. If anything, it's probably increased more than anything. Yeah, but they go reasonably smoothly. I think everyone taps in and at least you've got a reasonably captive audience. I think it's too easy when you're in the studio to sort of say, oh, I'm a bit busy, and you sort of stick at your desk. But whereas you do it online, and I think it's easy. It's easy to get involved and to focus on it. So it's been pretty good. I think the key to it is probably just making sure that they're clear on how much time they've got. As they'll more than likely soak up as much time as they possibly can. But yeah, anywhere between sort of 10 minutes to half an hour, we've experienced 2 or 3 a week, but more trouble vetting them at the moment.
I did notice an uptake in suppliers putting together webinars and that sort of thing actually before we reached this crisis. It was actually already happening. It's happening a bit more now.
Yeah, I feel that it's weird for us because we like to see the pitchings and turn them on. So it's nice to talk in the video with people that we usually see, but okay, how can this work? Can I see? Or I want to touch, particularly, I want to touch. So I think, yeah, it's fun, but it's not the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's spot on, Anna. I think having that sort of hands-on experience and playing with it and dropping it on the floor, making sure it's good quality, that sort of thing. I think that you don't get the opportunity to do that at the moment, which is yeah, which makes it hard. I think we always make a bit of a point of making sure that anything we specify, we have our hands on and we touch first and we play around with, and so you know precisely what you're going to get. So yeah, it's I think if this goes for much longer, you're going to lose that opportunity with some of the new products. So you're sort of going on the trust of some of the suppliers to tell you how it works. But yeah, it's a good point. It's the problem.
All right. Next question. How do you balance being transparent, but not to cause panic or worry that they didn't previously have? Stephen, go ahead and start and then pass it along to somebody else. How do you balance being transparent with, I'm assuming with your staff, but not to cause panic or worry that they may not have had?
Well, that's all about being diplomatic and being very careful in choosing the right words. It's always better to hold back, wait a little bit longer and choose exactly the right words that very clearly say what you want to say in a very political, well-mannered fashion, rather than feeling as though you have to do it straight away. That's how I would choose to approach it. Any other thoughts, guys?
Anyone else?
David Becker, your lips haven't moved the whole time. According to your image. Is David still there?
He might be having some connection issues.
We might have lost him.
Yeah, we might have lost him. We can keep going on here. Let's see. Let me pull up the next question. When the situation in the world gets better, will the companies...
Hello.
Okay. He's having some microphone issues. We're going to keep going. Yeah. Okay. There we go. When the situation in the world gets better, will the companies employ international light design graduates or interns? That's a pretty broad question. So, and you guys have already alluded to it, that it's hard to tell right now what's going to be happening as far as hiring graduates or interns. But if anyone has any feedback on that, feel free to go ahead.
I'm not sure if this situation really impacts that, to be honest. I mean, I'm assuming they mean bringing bringing internationals into the country as new employees. I mean, I think that's something that will rely more on the travel restrictions than anything. I don't think it's a fear to bring anyone on board that's based overseas at the moment. I don't think that's an issue.
Okay.
I think the other thing is the government's been talking about a snap back or a spring back or words to that effect, whatever it was that ScoMo said after this is all over. But I don't think it will be that binary. It's not going to be a day where there's COVID and then suddenly there's not. It will be a very long, slow emergence back into the light, I think. It won't just be a day we'll suddenly know that we're out of it. So it'll be a shallow curve to get there. So things could take a while.
All right. And this will probably be the last one before we hit our time. I want to make sure everyone, I know it's Friday afternoon for you guys, so you're ready to head out. Is it a good idea to provide lectures showing your skills to your target market? If so, how would you do that?
Guys?
Any thoughts on providing lectures to show off skills?
I could see that Nolte's done something like that. They're hosting events like that. I've not considered it.
No, it's a really tough one to answer, to be honest. It's I think what we need to be mindful of is, and this is definitely from my experience, the amount of information that's going back and forth now has doubled at least, because everyone's sitting there in front of their computers. There's this influx of what I like to call COVID spam, which is people telling them what's going on because of COVID, or we're still at full capacity even though the COVID thing. You get 3 or 4 of those a day at least. And I think there's a point at which we maybe need to be mindful of overcooking it and putting too much information out there for people to get involved in or for people to hear. So yeah, look, I think if they're poignant issues and that's fine, I think that's valid. But maybe a little bit of restraint with flooding the internet with information, I think would be a good thing.
All right. With that, I'd like to thank Stephen Brown for coordinating all of this. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining us. I'd like to thank all of our attendees for also joining us and listening to this. Thank you all again. I hope you have a great afternoon. If you have any questions, you can always follow up with the IALD. We can get those questions off to the speakers and have them respond, or you can contact them directly because you probably know them. With that, I wish everyone over on the other side of the world a very good rest of Friday and into a good weekend. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you again to the speaker in the panel. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.